Before I get started, I have a bit of a disclaimer, a confession, if you will. I am a millennial and a Republican. Do you know what that makes me? An endangered species. Now, this term millennial, I didn't hear about it until just a few years ago. But according to the Pew Research Center, millennials are people born between the years of 1981 and 1999. So, if you had a Teddy Ruxpin or a Cabbage Patch doll, you just made the cut. But a Rubik's Cube, I'm not so sure. Now, for the younger people in the audience, this is what childhood looked like before the internet. Well, today, millennials are coming of age. In fact, as of May of 2015, we became the largest workforce in America. It's clear now more than ever before that we have a vested interest in the future and direction of this country. Now, my talk is twofold. First, it's about some of the challenges facing our democracy and how it functions, but also a reason to motivate, empower, and inspire young people to get involved in the process. Well, back in 2008, half of registered millennials came out to vote, with 2/3 supporting eventual President Barack Obama. Now, in 2014, that participation declined to a paltry 20%. Now, more recently, in the Democratic primary, millennials are surging for Bernie Sanders with nearly 85% support. Now, on the Republican side, an emergency dispatch crew has been sent out in search of young voters. So, why, for years, a decline in participation, yet a sudden resurgence in optimism? Well, Bernie Sanders is the only candidate that has consistently campaigned on a platform to reform a system that has alienated and disenfranchised so many. Now, while he lists several issues throughout his campaign, there are two that I fundamentally believe are keeping our democracy from realizing its greatest potential. And that's gerrymandering and super PACs. So every 10 years, the United States takes a census to locate and document people living in the country. Once it's completed, states and their respective local governments reapportion districts for the various elected offices. Now, while this process appears fairly democratic, oftentimes it's led by the political party in the majority. Now, gerrymandering is a savvy process by which redistricting methods are used to create a competitive advantage for a particular group or political party, as you can see here. Now, named after a Massachusetts governor in 1812, gerrymandering is not new to the political realm. But in the age of computers and big data, political mapmakers are more confident than ever in the results that they can deliver. So on the left here, you see Illinois' 4th congressional district, also known as headphones or earmuffs. It was drawn by Democrats and is nearly 73% Hispanic. Now, while this district offers the opportunity for Hispanics to win a congressional seat, it really deprives them at the shot at 2. On the right, we have North Carolina's 12th district. It was drawn by Republicans and is 45% African American. By compressing the minority vote, a false majority was created. Now, while North Carolina is roughly a 50-50 state politically, Republicans control 10 out of the 13 congressional districts. Now, recently, the U.S. Supreme Court deemed that these maps were unconstitutional and ordered the state to redraw them. So what we have today is, instead of voters picking representatives, we have representatives picking voters, and in some cases, their opponents' voters. Another issue that came about in January 2010 was the Supreme Court ruling in Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. In short, this ruling deemed that corporations are people and they can start political action committees with unlimited fundraising horsepower. They can promote messages or send negative attack ads, but they are not allowed to collaborate with candidates. But this is largely unenforced. This has allowed large amounts of money from DC to flow into local congressional races, and has really changed the way that our public servants go about their business. They are now tasked with 24/7 fundraising and perpetual campaigning and casting votes in the best interest of re-election for fear that the big money will come after them. Now, it's not to say that money is the end-all be-all in politics, because for those who have been following the recent presidential race, Jeb Bush, who is a top fundraiser, is no longer there, as he was only able to garner roughly 2 to 3% in each state that he participated in. But the reality is super PACs are growing faster than any industry that we have in America, and that is something that I think that a lot of Americans should be concerned about. Now, while both political parties are guilty of gerrymandering, as well as their influence from super PACs, Republicans have really become the victims of their own electoral success from the fall of 2010. Because they drew a majority of the maps for states as well as state legislatures, they have basically made it impossible to lose the House. Now, for the big money, that means it's easier to flow into their primary races. Now, these short-term gains made by Republicans could have long-term consequences with millennials. Because while young people embrace entrepreneurship, innovation, with a healthy skepticism of government intervention, social issues are the driving force of today, and Republicans are failing to connect with America's youngest voting population. As you can see here, that doesn't mean by any means that millennials are de facto Democrats. In fact, we are the most independent generation ever. Having never witnessed a functional Congress, we have little reason to support either political institution, much less its establishment candidates such as Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton. Typically, candidates campaign with their last names, but because of the negativity, for one of the first times in history, you see a few candidates running on their first names as a way to rebrand themselves. But I would say millennials are fairly pragmatic in their approach to support elected leaders. They don't care if they are female, black, gay, Muslim. It's about the campaign promises they make and the actions that follow. Well, several news articles say that millennials' political views don't make sense, or they are paradoxical. In fact, the Daily Kos says that we are libertarian socialists. Allow me a second to try to clarify this glaring contradiction. We are deemed libertarian because we believe in a live and let live society. The data shows that millennials overwhelmingly support gay rights, as well as the legalization of marijuana. And when it comes to government, we're not so sure of its altruism. And that's based on policies such as drone warfare, a discriminatory criminal justice system, as well as trade policies that ship jobs overseas. As the most racially diverse generation in America, only being 56% white, we don't buy into the categories or labels, much less the stereotypes of the past. In fact, we don't even like to be called millennials. With that, what we're looking for in government is accountability, transparency, equality, equal opportunity, civil rights, and social justice for all Americans, regardless of the color of their skin or whom they love. Now, it's been said that previous generations deem us to be lazy or self-entitled. So allow me a minute of personal privilege and a lesson of anthropology. I graduated just a few months after the war in Iraq started in 2003. Millennials have supplied the bodies to this endless war only to return home to a dysfunctional Veterans Affairs Department. We are the most educated generation in the history of America, but we've really never experienced a growing economy. The reality is millennials face wage stagnation as well as underemployment. Some millennials have student debt so great it makes most mortgages blush. And through the financial crisis, many Americans with good jobs but bad credit were forced into the rental market. And as this pushed up prices, it really pushed out millennials I can assure you, we really don't want to be living in our parents' basement until we're 30. But because government has been in this holding pattern for so long, millennials have resorted to volunteerism instead of voting. In fact, in 2013, we mustered up 14.5 million volunteers and helped double the rate of U.S. volunteerism. I don't know about you, but I think we deserve a trophy for that. But we will settle for a participation ribbon or two. Well, today, for the millennials that are really involved in the process, a new organization has been created called the Millennial Action Project. And it was created as a collaboration between the congressmen and women to change the politics, to take it back to what it used to be, about consensus and compromise. And this organization has started to plant seeds in state legislatures all around the country. Because millennials really understand that if we don't solve the problems of today, they will definitely be waiting for us tomorrow. Now, right now, millennials are the largest living generation in America. We compose 36% of the electorate this fall and will be the largest voting bloc for the next 25 years. Our democracy not only depends on an informed citizenry, but also one that participates. Because in this life, you miss 100% of the shots you do not take. So as the rising generation of leaders in America, this is the time to voice our vote. Because millennials matter in elections. Thank you.